Picture this. Paris, July 11th, 1924. The tunnel beneath the Colombes Stadium. A young Scotsman sits alone in the half-dark, rolling a small scrap of paper between calloused fingers. Outside, 45,000 people are chanting. The muffled roar seeps through the concrete like a tide. British press voices are still echoing in his memory. The 9 months of fury that had followed his decision. Traitor to the empire. Religious fanatic. He has let his country down. He was supposed to be their golden boy. The fastest man in Scotland. Favored to win the 100 meters. The glamour race of the games. The one the world had come to see. But when the Olympic schedule was published, the heats for the 100 meters fell on a Sunday. And this man does not run on Sunday. Not for glory, not for country, not for a king. He withdrew from the race he was born to win. So they gave him the 400 meters instead. A longer, more grueling distance. Not his event, not his training. The specialists who had spent years preparing for this race looked at him and saw an obstacle, not a threat. He unfolds the note. A fellow athlete slipped it to him moments ago. It is a quotation from 1 Samuel 2:30. He that honors me, I will honor. He stands. He walks into the blinding Parisian sun. The gun fires. He throws his head back, eyes skyward, arms windmilling in that wild, unorthodox gait that every coach told him was wrong and every rival discovered was impossible to beat. The man who gave up the race he should have won crosses the line, clear of the fastest runners in the world. World record, 47.6 seconds. Gold. Winning a gold medal makes you a hero. But what if the God who gave you that speed asks you to lay the medal in the dirt, step into a war zone, and die in obscurity? His name is Eric Liddell. This is the price of a calling, and this is the story of a man who paid it in full. Comment below with, "Lord, I will run only for you." If you are ready to lay down your ambitions, run your race for an audience of one, and pay whatever it costs to honor God before the crowd. Also commit to stay with us until the very end, where we reveal the 3 spiritual disciplines that kept Eric's fire burning from the coal mines of Scotland to a Japanese prison camp, and that are available to you right now. We want to believe that people like Eric Liddell are born different, that God stamps certain souls with an extra measure of something before they arrive. It is a comfortable belief, because it lets the rest of us off the hook. It is also false. Eric Henry Liddell was born on January 16th, 1902, in Tientsin, China, to Scottish missionaries James and Mary Liddell. Do not picture a peaceful compound. They had survived the Boxer Rebellion, a violent uprising that killed hundreds of Chinese Christians, burned churches, and drove his parents from their first station in Mongolia before they settled in Tientsin. He was not born into a safe mission field. He was born into a church that had already bled. When Eric was 6, his parents sent him and his brother Rob to boarding school in England and sailed back to China. The missionary rotation meant 7 years of physical absence. Mary Liddell could barely bring herself to do it, but she wrote both boys a letter every single week without fail. Eric would not see his parents again until he was 12. What does a 6-year-old boy do with 7 years of physical absence from the people he loves most? He learned something the comfortable world never teaches, that the deep things of God are not found in proximity to comfort. They are found in the gap between what you have and what you need. Eric Liddell's extraordinary inner stability in later years did not fall from the sky. It was forged in an English boarding school, reading letters from China, learning to anchor himself to something that does not move. At Eltham College, his gift on the athletic field began to announce itself. He and Rob so dominated their annual sports days that the results showed only Liddell names in first and second place across 6 different events. Eric set the school record in the 100 yards at 10.2 seconds. He became captain of cricket and rugby, but he is fast before anyone outside his school knows his name. Greatness always has a hidden history. At Edinburgh University, his athletic reputation exploded. He ran the 100 yards, He played rugby for Scotland, 7 international matches between 1922 and 1923. His trainer Tommy McKerchar spotted him at Powder Hall, where they trained alongside greyhound races, noticed his unorthodox style, and worked with him. And here is a detail worth pausing on. McKerchar never tried to change the way Eric ran. The head thrown back, the arms windmilling, the eyes on the sky. Every coaching instinct said it was wrong. McKerchar left it alone. God does not always fix what the world thinks needs fixing. He works with it. But something happened in this season that mattered more than any race. A young divinity student named D.P. Thompson, failing to draw coal miners to his evangelistic meetings, went through Rob Liddell to reach Eric. Thompson asked. Eric said yes, though he later called it the single bravest act of his life. He was a runner, not a preacher. The morning after, a letter arrived from his sister in China. Isaiah 41:10. Fear not, for I am with thee. Those words settled it. He went. The coal miners came for the athlete and stayed for the gospel. A reporter covered the meeting, and from that night, Eric discovered what God intended to do with his speed. Use it to fill rooms, then fill them with truth. People came for the athlete and stayed because they sensed someone who had actually met God. Around this time, through a fellow runner named Loudon Hamilton, Eric encountered what would become the Oxford Group movement. They practiced 4 absolutes: absolute purity, unselfishness, honesty, and love, and a daily quiet time. Alone with God each morning, reading scripture, praying, then sitting in silence to listen. Eric adopted this completely and practiced it every day for the rest of his life. Not a vague habit. A structured appointment with God, kept in the dark, regardless of what the day held. He paid the price of public identity and private discipline, years before anyone was watching, and it produced a man who could stand alone against an empire without flinching. By 1923, Eric Liddell was the fastest man in Scotland and one of the fastest in the world. The 1924 Paris Olympics were approaching, and his path to the 100-meter gold seemed inevitable. Then the schedule was published. The heats for the 100 meters fell on a Sunday. Eric made his decision 9 months before the games, not in a dramatic ship scene as the film depicts. There was no crisis moment. There was simply a man who had spent years training his conscience, and a line drawn long before anyone asked him to cross it. It was not available for negotiation. He withdrew from the 100 meters. The backlash was immediate and ferocious. Parliament, the press, fellow athletes. A member of the royal family was personally dispatched to persuade him. One man suggested that the continental Sabbath ended at noon and the heats were in the afternoon, so perhaps Eric could run. Eric replied, "My Sabbath lasts all day." 6 words. The negotiation ended. He paid with his reputation, his national standing, and the event he had trained for his entire athletic life. And he paid it without complaint. He entered the 400 meters instead, a distance he was not built to run at Olympic level, and trained relentlessly for the open door. In Paris, he improved his time in every round, running 4 races over 2 days at a distance he had never previously done competitively. In the final, he drew the outside lane, meaning he could see none of his competitors. Everything seemed stacked against him. On the morning of the final, the note was slipped into his hand. "He that honors me, I will honor." The gun fired. He ran the first 200 meters as if it were a sprint. The crowd gasped. Coaches shook their heads. No one runs a 400-meter final like that. But in the final straight, his head went back, his eyes fixed on the sky, his arms drove in that unorthodox windmill, and he did not fade. He accelerated. He crossed the line 3 meters ahead of the field. World record, 47.6 seconds. When a missionary later asked him if he had ever prayed to win a race, Eric replied, "No, I never prayed that I would win a race, but I prayed for the athletics meetings, that in these meetings the Lord would be glorified." He was not asking God for a gold medal. He was asking God to be glorified. The gold medal was God's answer, not Liddell's request. He stands on the podium. A screenwriter would later put words to what everyone who knew him had always sensed. "When I run, I feel his pleasure." He never said those words, but everyone who watched him run believed them. The medal was never the destination. It was a platform. And Eric Liddell was already planning to abandon the platform. But what you have not seen yet is the moment where he gives up not just a race, but his entire life. And where that surrender begins to produce something that an Olympic gold medal never could. That is where we are going next. And it will leave you undone. Before we follow Eric into China and count the full price he paid, I want to acknowledge the people who make stories like this possible. The research behind a story like Eric's takes weeks of digging through archives and long-forgotten records. Our members are the ones who keep this work alive, ensuring these witnesses are never buried in silence. Hit the join button or click the membership link below. You will not just be supporting a channel, you will be standing in the same spirit as the witnesses themselves. At the height of his fame, Eric Liddell announced his intention to return to China as a missionary teacher. The offers on the table were limitless. He packed one suitcase, left his trophies on a dusty mantelpiece, and ran his final race on Scottish soil before 15,000 fans. 2 days later, his teammates pulled his carriage through the streets of Edinburgh without a horse to Waverley Station. Hymns were sung as the train pulled out. His last public words on Scottish soil, "Christ for the world needs Christ." The world stage went dark. The real race had begun. China in 1925 was not the peaceful mission field Eric had dimly remembered as a child. It was a country fracturing under civil war, warlords, communist insurgency, and the creeping shadow of Japanese imperial ambition. Eric took up his post at the Anglo-Chinese College in Tientsin, teaching chemistry, developing a sports program, leading Sunday school, cycling into the countryside to reach villages no one else would go to. And then, he fell in love. Florence Mackenzie, the daughter of Canadian missionaries, had caught his eye years earlier through the quiet rhythms of mission community life. They married in 1934 and had 3 daughters. Those who knew him in China described a man who was as fully present at home as he was on the mission field. A joyful, unhurried father who made his daughters feel like the most important people in any room. He paid the price of anonymity and danger, cycling through gunfire-threatened territory, raising a family in a country at war. And the fruit was a community that saw in him the same thing he had seen in the gospel, a man who gave himself without remainder. Then, during his years of rural evangelism as conditions worsened under Japanese occupation, Liddell risked his life crossing Japanese army lines to rescue a wounded Chinese man named Hui Shu, who had been left for dead on the steps of a Chinese temple. He got him onto a cart, pushed him to a makeshift hospital, and stayed with him. Hui Shu wanted to die. He had lost his wife, his children, his livelihood. But watching this foreign man pour himself out day after day, for people not his own, in a country not his homeland, something broke open in Hui Shu. He came to faith. He was a painter. In gratitude, he gave Liddell a painted scroll bearing the words of John 1:5. People living in darkness have seen a great light. Eric carried that scroll with him when he was interned. It hung above his bed in the Vicean camp until the day he died. In 1941, with Florence pregnant with their 3rd daughter, Eric made the most shattering decision of his life. He stood on a crowded dock and said goodbye to Florence and their 2 daughters as they boarded a ship to Canada. He told Patricia, his eldest, to look after her mother until he got back. They expected 2 years. He stayed. He would never see Florence again. He would never meet his youngest daughter, Maureen. "I can't leave my people here." He paid with his family, the deepest human price any man can pay. Not in a moment of dramatic sacrifice, but in a quiet, anguished surrender at a dock, watching a ship carry everyone he loved away from him. He turned and walked back into a burning country. Because the discipline of surrender is not learned at the crisis. It is learned in the years of quiet times before the crisis arrives. March 1943. The Japanese government ordered all enemy nationals in North China into civilian assembly centers, a polite name for prison camps. Eric Liddell, along with nearly 1,800 men, women, and children, missionaries, business people, entertainers, prostitutes, executives, Roman Catholic priests, atheists, was marched into the Waizian internment camp in Shandong province. The camp had been a beautifully kept American Presbyterian mission compound. Japanese troops had stripped it bare, plaster torn from walls, pipes ripped out, sewers blocked and overflowing within days of the internees' arrival. One small room for a family, starvation rations, no medicine, no privacy, disease, despair. And into this, Eric Liddell became the lifeblood of 1,800 people. He cleaned latrines, carried coal for the elderly, organized sports for teenagers who had given up. And because there were no textbooks, he wrote an entire chemistry textbook from memory, opening it with the line, "The bones of inorganic chemistry. Can these dry bones live?" That book survives today, displayed at the Scottish Parliament. A dying man in a prison camp, writing a resurrection question as the first line of a science textbook. He was living the theology he was teaching. He served on the camp's discipline committee, handling infractions internally so that rule breakers faced the committee rather than the Japanese, where the cost could be imprisonment or death. A fellow internee made a wooden sign for the door of his dormitory. If Eric was in, it read, "Uncle Eric is in." If out, it was slid across. The children knew. If it said in, you could knock. He was always available. Every single morning before the camp stirred, he rose in the dark, lit a small peanut oil lamp, and kept his quiet time. Scripture, prayer, silence. His roommate Joe Cotterill noticed and began joining him wordlessly. They became silent morning companions. This was the same Oxford group discipline Eric had practiced since his 20s in Edinburgh. The same structured appointment with God he had kept through every season of his life, now maintained under barbed wire and malnutrition. His peace was not a personality trait. It was a product. The discipline came before the camp. The camp only revealed what the discipline had already built. A teenage boy named Stephen Metcalf had no shoes in winter. Liddell came to him quietly and pressed his own running shoes into the boy's hands, Olympic-era shoes, repaired with string, soles tied up with care. He said almost nothing. Metcalf only later understood what he had been given. The shoes the Flying Scotsman had raced in on the cinder track of Paris, given to a cold child in a prison camp without ceremony or announcement. In a Bible study on Matthew 5, Liddell told the teenagers, "I get up every day and pray for the Japanese." He challenged them to do the same. Stephen Metcalf began that day, and after the war became a missionary to Japan. Another internee made a promise to God in the camp and spent decades in ministry in Africa. His prayer life did not just sustain him, it reproduced in others. Langdon Gilkay, a secular American scholar interned at Waizian, who later became one of America's most prominent theologians, had no stake in flattering missionaries. He wrote, "Often in an evening I would see him bent over a chessboard or a model boat, or directing some sort of square dance, absorbed, weary, and interested, pouring all of himself into this effort to capture the imagination of these penned-up youths. He was overflowing with good humor and love for life, and with enthusiasm and charm. It is rare indeed that a person has the good fortune to meet a saint, but he came as close to it as anyone I have ever known." Toward the end of 1944, his roommates noticed something was wrong. His speech was slowing, his repartee gone, severe headaches beginning. As his memory started to fail, he determined to exercise it, memorizing the final 3 chapters of A Tale of Two Cities while working the water pump, reading a line on the way down and reciting it on the way up. He was living the story he was memorizing. Sidney Carton's line, "It is a far, far better thing I do than I have ever done. A man who gives his life so another with a family can go free." In these final months, according to accounts later confirmed by his own daughter Patricia and revealed publicly by the Chinese government in 2008. A prisoner exchange had been negotiated and a place secured for Eric Liddell. A door out, his family in Canada. Freedom. He looked around the camp at a pregnant woman who desperately needed medical care and safety. Without announcement, without telling anyone, he gave her his place. He stayed. He chose to remain, knowing his health was failing so that another could live. He paid with his health, his freedom, and finally his life. And he paid it without any audience, without any announcement, without a single word of self-promotion. He had written his own prayer before the camp, and lived it inside it. Father, I pray that no circumstances, however bitter or however long drawn out, may cause me to break thy law, the law of love to thee and to my neighbor, that I may not become resentful, have hurt feelings, hate, or become embittered by life's experiences, but that in and through all I may see thy guiding hand and have a heart full of gratitude for thy daily mercy, daily love, daily power, and daily presence. He wrote that before the camp. He lived it inside the camp. He had learned it in the days of ease, so that when the days of fire came, he was already prepared. Early 1945. The brain tumor the camp doctors could not diagnose was advancing. He continued serving. He told no one how deep the suffering had gone. The Salvation Army band that played outside the hospital twice a week received a note from a nurse. Eric Liddell is dying. He would like you to play Finlandia, Be Still My Soul. They played it through the hospital wall. Be still my soul, the hour is hasting on, when we shall be forever with the Lord. When disappointment, grief, and fear are gone, sorrow forgot, love's purest joys restored. Be still my soul, when change and tears are past, all safe and blessed we shall meet at last. Nurse Annie Buchan tended to him in his final hours. In his last conscious moments, he attempted to say the word he had been living for 43 years. He said, "Surin," and his head fell back. February 21st, 1945. Eric Liddell was gone. He was 43 years old. He had never met his youngest daughter. He would never come home. The camp fell silent in a way it had never been silent before. Grown men who had not cried in decades wept openly, not because of the Olympic gold, but because he was their friend. His death united people who could not share a room in life. A man who was not a Christian said of Eric in the days after his death, "Jesus Christ used to live in our camp, but he died yesterday. He built no church building. He became one." In Toronto, weeks before the telegram arrived, Florence told her daughter Patricia, "Tricia, I think your father is coming home. I can feel him right here. And he's saying to me, 'It's all right, Flo, it's all right.'" Shortly afterwards, the death notification arrived. He was near because he had just passed through. Florence raised her daughters without bitterness toward the Japanese or toward God. The tree of his obedience bearing fruit in his family long after his death. Decades later, Patricia received a letter from a nursery school teacher in Toronto who remembered Eric arriving every evening to collect his daughters, stopping at a big tree, waiting for them to see him, going back on one heel, then scooping them up and throwing them in the air. Patricia said, "That is when I grieved for my father. That is when I realized what a huge sacrifice he was from our lives." 56 years after Paris, Scottish sprinter Alan Wells won the 100-meter Olympic gold and dedicated it to Eric Liddell. The race Liddell refused became in the end his. In 1989, a civil engineer named Charles Walker located Liddell's grave at the former campsite in what is now Weifang, after a 2-year search driven by the conviction that Scotland's greatest hero must not be forgotten. In 1991, the University of Edinburgh erected a granite memorial with Isaiah 40:31. "They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary." Isaiah's promise, carved in the place where Eric Liddell finally grew too weary to run and stopped. In China, where he was born, where he served, where he died, the verdict was simple. He won no gold medals here, he won our hearts. And for that reason, to some of us in China, Eric Liddell will ever be a champion. You stayed to the end. And as promised, here are the 3 spiritual disciplines that kept Eric Liddell's fire burning for 43 years. First, the pre-dawn quiet time. Every day of his adult life, including inside a Japanese prison camp, Eric rose before the world woke to read scripture, pray, and sit in silence before God. He adopted this through the Oxford Group's framework and practiced it as a structured daily appointment, not a vague habit. His peace in the camp was not a personality trait. It was a product. This discipline is available to you today, before anything else demands your attention. Second, the trained conscience. Eric's Sabbath refusal at the Olympics was not a crisis decision. It was made 9 months before Paris, because he had spent years training his convictions before they were tested publicly. He decided what he would and would not do before the world ever asked him to choose. That kind of integrity is built in private, long before the moment of pressure arrives. Third, complete surrender as a daily posture. His final words were not a crisis decision. They were the culmination of a lifetime. He wrote in his own manual, "Victory over all the circumstances of life comes not by might nor by power, but by a practical confidence in God. Learn in the days of ease and comfort, so that when the days of hardship come, you will be fully prepared." He practiced surrender before he needed it, so that when the fire came, it only revealed what was already there. Eric Liddell did not become the man the camp could not break in the camp. He became that man in a boarding school in England, in a coal mining town near Edinburgh, in the early mornings of a Chinese mission compound, in a quiet time kept faithfully for 20 years before any of it was ever tested. The camp did not produce his character, it revealed it. The question his life puts to you is this: what are you doing in the days of ease that will prepare you for the days of fire? Comment below with, "Lord, I will run only for you." If you are ready to lay down your ambitions, surrender your gifts entirely to God, and run your race for an audience of 1, no matter what it costs. Don't forget to hit that notification bell, like and subscribe to Cloud of Witnesses for more life-changing stories of faith that will equip you to boldly fulfill the call of God in your life. This week, rise 15 minutes earlier than usual and keep a quiet time. Scripture, prayer, and 2 minutes of silence to listen. Do it 7 days in a row. Every day. That is how the discipline becomes the man. What if the next witness started life as a gardener's boy in rural Scotland with no education and opened an entire continent to the gospel? What discipline sustained him through 50 years of silence before God unlocked a continent? Check out this next video to discover the impossible story of Robert Moffat, the spiritual principle that turns hidden faithfulness into generational harvest, and the one practice that will transform how you pray for the people furthest from God.